Hello, everyone. This is Helen, and welcome back to The Cheater's End, the place where betrayal meets consequence, and where we learn together how fragile yet powerful marriage truly island. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, so you never miss another story that exposes deception and delivers justice. Today's story begins not with an argument, not with shouting, but with silence. A silence so sharp it could slice through the heart. A husband walked into his kitchen one morning and found a note on the granite counter, held down by a house key, but not the front door key. The back door key, the one his wife always used. That small detail told him everything. This wasn't an accident. This was deliberate. The note was short, clinical, almost cold. 4 sentences written in her looping cursive that always looked softer than she was in reality. I need to be on my own for a while. This isn't working for me anymore. I need freedom. Don't look for me. That was it. No apology. No, I love you. Just a declaration of escape. He was 35. His name, let's call him Henry. Her name, Sophia. And in that moment, as Henry stood in the silent kitchen, still heavy with the scent of freshly brewed coffee, the life they had built together felt like a stage set where the actress had walked off mid-performance. The tiled backsplash they'd argued over, the expensive Scandinavian chair she rarely sat in, the framed photos still perched on her nightstand props now, mocking him. But here's the thing. Sophia had always been dramatic, impulsive, and prone to gestures she thought were powerful. Henry was different. He didn't make scenes. He made plans. Instead of running after her, he dialed 3 numbers. First, a ruthless divorce attorney, James Chen, the kind of man who could turn heartbreak into legal precision. Second, his bank, claiming his card had been compromised, freezing the joint accounts immediately. And third, he called no one. Not her mother, not her friends, not even his own family, because Henry wasn't going to chase. She wanted freedom, and he was going to give it, just not in the way she imagined. When he opened their closet later, half of Sophia's side was empty. She had taken the expensive clothes, the luxury items, the things she thought defined her. But she left behind their first date dress, their shared photos, and her muddy running sneakers dumped carelessly in the middle of the rug Henry had bought. That final act of thoughtlessness hardened his resolve. 2 weeks of vacation sat unused on his calendar. Henry packed his hiking boots and left not for her, but for himself. For 3 days he climbed mountain trails, filling his lungs with clean air, letting his body ache until there was no room for grief. And when his phone finally buzzed with messages, he saw exactly what he expected. At first, smug texts from Sophia. Are you seriously ignoring me? Then anger. Why isn't my card working? And finally, panic. Please call me. I need you. Henry smiled bitterly. Not guilt, just confirmation. She didn't miss him. She missed the safety net. Monday morning, freshly showered and dressed in a crisp suit, Henry drove back into the city and pulled into the parking lot of his lawyer's office. And there she was, Sophia. Not the glamorous, finally free woman from her Instagram post, cocktail in hand. This Sophia was disheveled, tear-stained, mascara streaking her cheeks, sitting on the low brick wall outside the office like a child left behind. When she saw Henry, she sprang up, fury in her voice. Henry, what the hell is going on? My card was declined at the hotel. I was humiliated, and the savings account is frozen. I tried calling the bank, and they said you reported a security breach. What is this? Henry adjusted his tie, calm as stone. It was a security breach, Sophia. Our financial security was breached. Her face twisted, desperate. This isn't funny. That's our money. I needed it. I had plans. I'm sure you did, Henry said evenly, walking toward the glass doors. She grabbed his arm, her voice cracking between anger and pleading. Okay, maybe I should have talked to you. I just needed space, a little break to clear my head. But you? You hired a lawyer? A divorce lawyer? Are you insane? Henry stopped, looked down at her hand until she released him, and spoke with quiet finality. You left a note. It said, "Don't look for me." It didn't say, "I'll be back Monday. Please keep the money ready." You wanted freedom. I'm formalizing it, she sobbed, her voice rising. You can't just divorce me. We're supposed to work on this. Therapy. Talking. You can't blow up our life. He turned back, his eyes cold. You detonated the bomb, Sophia. I'm just picking through the rubble. And with that, he disappeared behind the heavy glass doors, her cries muffled as the door closed. For the first time, Sophia realized Henry wasn't playing her game. She had staged a grand exit, expecting him to chase. Instead, he had pulled the floor out from under her. But Sophia wasn't done. Not yet. A week later, a new voice appeared on Henry's voicemail. A man's voice. Smooth. Arrogant. Henry, this is Mason. I think we got off on the wrong foot here. Sophia's upset. You're not being rational. Why don't you and I have a man-to-man chat and figure this out? Mason. The name Henry knew too well. The co-worker Sophia had lingered with at the Christmas party. The late-night texts Henry had once ignored. Now, the puzzle pieces clicked. Sophia's freedom wasn't solitude. It was Mason. Instead of calling back, Henry forwarded the voicemail to his lawyer with the subject line, "For the file." The next evening, Sophia and Mason showed up at Henry's door. Mason, smug in his expensive jacket, one hand on Sophia's back like he owned her. He rang the bell with an impatient jab. Henry opened the door, only a crack, the security chain still on. Yes? Henry, Mason said, his smile condescending. Good. We need to talk. I'm talking to my lawyer, Henry replied. Sophia should talk to hers. Mason tried to lean in, but the chain held. See, that's the problem. Sophia's willing to be reasonable. She's ready to come home, calm things down, sort this out like adults. Henry's eyes cut past Mason to Sophia, who stood silent, eyes downcast. There is no we, Henry said softly. She made her choice. Sophia finally spoke, her voice trembling. Henry, please, he's just trying to help. This is all a misunderstanding. Just let me in to get my things. Your things will be handled by our attorneys, Henry said flatly. Then he locked eyes with her. Besides, the key you left wouldn't have worked anyway. Her brow furrowed. What are you talking about? I changed the locks the morning I left. You vacated the property. You have no legal right here. Mason's smile twisted into aggression. Don't be an ass. This is her home too. She just needs her passport and clothes. Then her lawyer can make a request to mine. Henry began closing the door. Mason shoved against it, voice low and threatening. You'll regret this. I can make life very difficult for you. Henry didn't flinch. Is that a threat, Mason? Mason faltered, muttering, It's advice. I'll add it to the file, Henry said, and closed the door. Behind the safety of that door, Henry's composure cracked for just a moment. The stone of grief pressed heavy again, but it sharpened into something else resolve. He walked to his office, powered up their old desktop, and began searching. It didn't take long. Sophia hadn't even cleared her history. There it was. Hotel bookings, dinner reservations, 6 months of Instagram DMs with Mason. Screenshots captured every betrayal jokes about Henry's boring life, cruel comments about how predictable he was, plans for the future she thought she deserved. The final message chilled him. Note is on the counter. Freedom awaits. See you at the hotel in an hour. He saved every file, every message, onto a thumb drive labeled Leverage. The grief remained, but now it had an edge Henry intended to use. When we left off, Henry had already discovered his wife Sophia's affair with her co-worker Mason. A thumb drive labeled Leverage now sat in his drawer, 6 months of betrayal, captured in screenshots, hotel bookings, cruel jokes, and plans whispered in private messages. Henry wasn't a man who screamed, who broke plates, who begged. He was a man of plans, and plans, executed carefully, can destroy more effectively than rage ever could. The first wave of consequence came not from confrontation but from paperwork. Henry and Sophia had been renting their home with an option to buy. It had always been Henry's dream to own, while Sophia dismissed it as too suburban. But Henry, meticulous as ever, had been quietly saving toward the down payment. When the lease came up for renewal, Henry met their landlord in the quiet wood-paneled office of the property company. He placed Sophia's handwritten note on the table, the 4 sentences where she'd declared her freedom. "She's permanently vacated the property," Henry said, his voice steady. "This is her own writing. I'd like the new lease drawn in my name only." The landlord, a man in his 60s, with no patience for drama, scanned the note, nodded once, and said, "That'll be simpler for everyone." A week later, the paperwork was signed, Henry's name alone. When Sophia found out, her call came in like a storm. Her voice was ragged with disbelief. "You can't do this, Henry. You can't just erase me like that. I've lived there for 5 years. "You abandoned it," Henry replied, his tone calm, rehearsed. "And my lawyer has the documentation to prove it." The silence that followed was filled with her gasps, as if she'd been struck. Finally, she spat. "You're heartless." "No, Sophia," Henry said softly. "I'm just precise." But the legal maneuvers were only the beginning. Sophia thought she could control the story, paint herself as the restless wife who needed space, the poor woman suffocated by a boring husband. But the truth has a way of seeping out. And Henry knew he didn't need to shout it, he just had to let it circulate. At Sophia's marketing firm, whispers began almost immediately. Co-workers noticed her cozy lunches with Mason, the shared cabs after work, the way their weekend Instagram posts aligned a little too perfectly. One morning, in the company's glass-walled cafeteria, 2 junior employees giggled over their phones. "Did you see Sophia's post? Another freedom cocktail? Who do you think is taking the picture?" "Who else?" "Mason." It wasn't long before HR caught wind. Not because Henry reported it, he never did, but because Mason's own wife had filed a formal complaint. She'd found the messages, the bookings, the receipts. Her lawyers weren't subtle. The affair became office knowledge, and once something becomes gossip, it grows teeth. By the end of the quarter, Sophia and Mason were pariahs in their own workplace. Projects they once led were reassigned. The promotion Mason had bragged about in December evaporated. Senior leadership, wary of scandal, kept them at arm's length. Sophia, who had once thrived on being admired, now walked through hallways under a cloud of whispers. Financially, the collapse was even sharper. When Henry froze the accounts, Sophia thought she'd weather it with Mason's support. She pictured champagne weekends, his sleek credit card covering expenses. But Mason's wealth was an illusion. His designer suits and expensive haircut were financed on debt. His assets were tangled in his own divorce battle, which his wife fought savagely. Bills mounted. The glamorous hotel stays stopped. Dinners became takeout. Their new apartment, hastily rented in a neighborhood with flickering streetlights and the faint smell of mildew in the hallways, was a far cry from the suburban home Henry now quietly secured. Late one night, Henry's phone buzzed with a voicemail. He pressed play. "Hey, it's me, Sophia." Her voice was hoarse, unsteady. "Do you remember that trip we took to Charleston? The little inn with the balcony? We were happy then, weren't we? I don't know how we got here. Anyway, I really need my half of the $2,850 deposit from the old landlord. Can you just send it, please?" Henry listened, silent. He could hear the desperation beneath the nostalgia, the attempt to lure him back with memories. He didn't respond. The next morning, James, his lawyer, forwarded an email from Sophia's new attorney. The subject line read, "Urgent. Request for funds." The body demanded immediate release of Sophia's share of the deposit. James's reply was surgical. All marital assets remain frozen pending final judgment. Any communication must occur through counsel. Attached, please find a password-protected file named Mason. Inside were 10 pages of Sophia and Mason's messages, the evidence of her affair. The demand vanished. The divorce itself was quiet but brutal. Depositions were scheduled in a sterile office downtown. Henry sat at one end of a long table, James beside him, folders neatly stacked. Across from him, Sophia sat with her second attorney, a nervous man in an ill-fitting suit, clearly out of his depth. Mason waited in the lobby, excluded, his arrogance now a liability. Sophia tried to paint herself as a woman who had needed space, a wife overwhelmed by responsibility, misunderstood by her husband. Her eyes filled with practiced tears. She dabbed at them with a tissue, glancing at Henry to see if he flinched. He didn't. When James slid the printed screenshots across the table, Sophia's facade cracked. There, it was her own handwriting. Note is on the counter. Freedom awaits. See you at the hotel in an hour, her attorney stammered. Objection, relevance? James leaned back, his voice cool. Relevance is abandonment, premeditated infidelity, and financial dissipation. All documented, all admissible. Sophia's face drained of color. For once, she was silent. Meanwhile, Mason's wife reached out to Henry. The call came on a Tuesday evening. Henry considered ignoring it, but curiosity won. Mr. Daniels? Her voice was clipped, professional. This is Amelia, Mason's wife, or soon-to-be ex-wife. Henry's jaw tightened. What do you need? I wanted to thank you, she said, for forwarding the messages. My lawyer says they'll expedite things. Henry was quiet. Amelia continued, her tone softer now. I'm sorry for what she did to you. I know what it feels like to live with someone who treats loyalty as disposable. At least we can both move forward. For a moment, Henry felt a strange kinship with this stranger, two people bound by betrayal, finding dignity in survival. The months dragged, but Henry found solace in small rituals. He returned to the mountain trails, hiking every weekend, his boots caked with dirt, his lungs filled with clean air. He read books he'd bought years ago but never opened. He repainted the kitchen a deep shade of blue, calm, steady. Nothing like the sterile white Sophia had insisted on. Every change felt like a reclamation. A book on the shelf where her chair once Saturday, a plant thriving in sunlight where her clutter had been. Silence, not as absence, but as peace. The final settlement came 6 months after the note. In a hushed courtroom, the judge reviewed the evidence. Sophia received her car, her clothes, a small slice of the savings. Henry kept the rest, the accounts, the home, the option to buy. When he signed the purchase papers, the house became his, legally and fully. Walking out of the courthouse, Henry felt no triumph, just clarity. Justice hadn't been loud. It had been quiet, methodical, undeniable. As for Sophia and Mason, their downfall was almost predictable. They remained in the cramped apartment, their finances wrecked. Mason's divorce drained him. Sophia's dependence suffocated her. At work, both were sidelined, their reputations tarnished. Sophia's once flashy social media dried up. No more freedom cocktails, no more curated happiness, just silence. The last thread snapped with something almost laughable. One evening, Henry received an email from Spotify. Your password has been changed. He realized Sophia had still been leeching off their family plan. He logged in, removed her profile, reset the password, a small click. A lock he hadn't even realized was still open. And in that moment, Henry understood something profound. He didn't hate her. Hate was hot, consuming, endless. What he felt now was indifference. Cool. Final. The house no longer felt like a stage for a broken play. It felt like a home, his home, Sometimes, late at night, Henry allowed himself to remember the man standing in the kitchen with her note in his hand. That man had been devastated, but he had also been precise. That precision had carried him through. Sophia and Mason would likely spend years blaming him, twisting the story so they could remain the victims. But Henry knew the truth. He hadn't sought revenge. He had simply stepped aside and let the weight of their own choices bury them. All he had done was hold the door open and let justice walk in. And that is the end of this story. What can we learn from it? That sometimes the strongest response to betrayal isn't anger. It's calm. It's discipline. It's planning. That when someone leaves you for freedom, often what they really find is emptiness. And that survival, dignity, and peace aren't found in chasing the betrayer. They're found in letting go and building something better for yourself. This is Helen, and you've been listening to The Cheater's End. If this story resonated with you, subscribe and share it. Because somewhere out there, someone needs to know that betrayal doesn't define them. What they do next does. Until next time.